My name is Victor. I lived in Soviet Russia. I defected to America right as Berlin Wall fell down.
Nationalism in music is an expression of devotion that pertains to a region or culture.
Nationalism is very tricky. People think of Russia when they hear Tchaikovsky or Stravinsky, and we are very proud to have those music synonymous with Russia. But oftentimes it was the government who forced these ideas on us. They say you must be proud to be Russian. There were very much two classes, rich and no rich. They wanted it this way. They would push you down. They would not look after a little guy, only big guy with big bucks. Yet they say we cannot speak against it. They would read our mail. They say you must be proud to be Russian. But I didn't have a choice. To be Russian, that is. Much like Americans who are born in America. It wasn't something you earned. But, that doesn't mean you can't be proud. It's just how you carry that feeling and what you project onto others. So I chose to come to America. I love America, but I love Russia too. I had many great friends and family in Russia, and we had beautiful Siberian tigers. But I cannot pledge allegiance to one country. I can't say, I will stand by you no matter what you do. I don't have that much faith in one power. I have faith in things I choose, and it starts with me.
My name is Joe. I lived in Manhattan from 1967 to, I continued to work in the city through the 80s. When I think of protest songs, I think of people like John Lennon, Joan Baez, and even before that you had Bob Dylan. And going back into the 50s, there were people like Pete Seeger.
A protest song is a song that addresses or speaks out against political and/or social movements. The earliest form of protest songs may have existed in the Middle Ages, with French poets and singers taking issue with religious or political ideas, often referencing these issues indirectly through metaphors and similes.
I was actually one of the guys walking around with Lennon in 1972. I want to say April. It was a peace rally in the city. I think these songs mean different things to different people. Some people are scared, I think because they don't understand. But, they work, Protests work. They may take a while, but if you think about it, America wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for protests.
I'm Jerome. I used to work in radio in the 70s around the Philadelphia area. I was mostly behind the scenes kind of guy, producing, but occasionally I would be on late at night. You're listening to WIOQ FM 102, Philadelphia's home for soul. That kind of thing. Payola was mostly a thing of the past when I was in radio.
Payola was the illegal practice of paying disc jockeys to play or promote certain records.
That's back in the day when DJs would play what they wanted. There was no formatting, the DJ would decide. So you get a record executive coming in there wanting them to play their record, and they would pay these DJs off. Now, it wasn't always a bad thing. See, there was a lot of radio stations in the 60s who weren't playing good R&B, because coming out of the 50s, they didn't want to play black music or music that got the kids grooving, So if it wasn't for Payola, we might not hear people like James Brown or Brother Ray Charles.
My name is Darren, and I am a musicologist. A premiere was, and still is, the debut for a particular piece of music. The premiere can be one of the most important nights of a composer's life.
A premiere in classical music is the first performance of a musical work.
You have to remember the time that composers like Beethoven lived in. They didn't have our world of technology. They didn't have a radio they could just turn on and listen to music. There were no CD players where they could skip to the next track. They didn't even have the luxury of a record player where you had to get up and find the right spot on the vinyl, which would seem like a hassle in today's world. People had to go out to hear music. You either knew a musician, or there was one in your family, or you had to go to these concerts. You couldn't just sit back and say, "Well, that was nice, it was quite pleasant. What was that? Was that Beethoven's Ninth? Let's hear that again. I quite like that."
My name is Pat. I must have been in a dozen or so different garage bands throughout the 1960s. The British invasion, in my opinion, was responsible for this outbreak of bands all across the country. It seemed like almost overnight that everyone I talked to was in a band.
The British invasion is the term used to describe the number of rock and pop bands from the United Kingdom that were gaining popularity in the 1960s United States. The predominant group from this class is the Beatles.
What the Beatles did for the world of music, I think, is incredible. Because of their musical contributions, I think they are, and I really believe this, they are right up there with Mozart and Beethoven. And the time they did it in, I remember them coming to America early in 1964, and this was a very odd time for the country since we had just lost our president. And by 1969, they really weren't together anymore. So in these 5 to 6 years, they had gone from that bubblegum pop to the experimental psychedelic phase to these large, almost symphonic rock anthems. In those 5 to 6 years, they changed the world of music. We saw them and we wanted to be like them. Oh, nothing really happened with the bands I was in. I played this awful electric organ my aunt was trying to sell it at a garage sale, and no one bought it, so she decided to give it to me. And it had this real tinny, dorky sound, and it was basically a large harmonica, and the electric current would send air through it when a key was depressed. It had no practicality at all.